Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled Taber Town Council meeting for October 30th, 2020. I would call the meeting to order and ask for an adoption of the agenda as presented, please. Councillor Garner.
Mr. Mayor, I can make that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 3, adoption of the minutes. Item 3.1, minutes of regular meeting of council, September 28th, 2020. Mr. Armfeld.
These meeting minutes are here for your consideration and adoption, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on September 28th, 2020 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 4, no business arising. Item 4.1, Star Theatre. Mr. Armfeld.
Yes, Council, this afternoon we have Sarah Lee here from the Star Theatre group to make a presentation that details are attached to your agenda. Miss Lee, if you'd like to come up and just ask that you speak into the microphone, please.
Thank you, Miss Lee.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So in front of you, you see a document that basically outlines the summary of what it would cost to compare the two buildings that we've looked into for a future theater for Taber. The option 1 is a basic overview of what they would investigate for between the two buildings for approximately 200 to 230 people. And what it would cost to do what it would take to for the Civic or for the building that we've looked into downtown to become a theater for our town. And then there's the option 2, an intermediate one, which would look more into the mechanical and the electrical systems in those buildings and the engineering and what it would take to update them. And then option 3 would be more detailed, very detailed, in that it would give us the sketches and everything into what it would take. And then the costs, approximate costs as to what those would, to do those 3 basic options.
All right. Thank you. Any questions arising? Sir, first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to our delegation. In our package, it says that Dr. Torrey has had, he's completed an assessment of the tower building. Is that correct?
He has walked through it with
the
owner, and I believe, I can't remember exactly who it was that walked through, but someone else walked through with him. An architect, I believe it was.
But no new assessments have been done since the last presentation? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? None whatsoever. All right. Thank you. Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner.
I'm prepared to make a motion at this time. The council directs administration to pay for a basic assessment of the auditorium to provide a very basic design and high-level probable costs to convert the auditorium to a performance theater.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councillor Stravis.
Yes, Your Worship. I think we need to put a dollar figure on this here because an assessment can go anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000. So I'm not sure that I would support this motion without a cost figure in here.
All right, thank you. I believe there is a cost figure in there, actually, for an approximation.
Supporting document.
Pardon me?
Right here, Joe.
$7,000.
But it's not in the motion, though.
No.
Oh, excuse me. Amend it now.
You want to adjust your motion?
Yeah, I can adjust my motion if that helps at all.
Just want to verbalize that to
Sure.
confirm that if that's you're looking to amend that slightly?
Yeah, I'll amend my motion to also add to a maximum of $7,000 in cost.
All right, thank you, Mr. Arfeld.
Just by way of process, looking for a location for where that funding should come from, or a consideration for council that we roll this into the 2021 capital plan. Studies that contribute to capital, which certainly this would be a contribution to our capital foundation, could certainly be considered as part of that capital budget. So administration could work now to when, just to see what $7,000 would get us to when we actually evaluate that capital budget for 2021 and bring that information back for council at that time, just so you're understanding what $7,000 in the capital budget would get you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the motion only speaks of assessing the auditorium. So we're not interested in assessing the other building, or do we think we have enough information? Like, that was just my question to Councillor Garner.
I guess I'm trying to understand the way this is written. It says Mr. Torrey completed an assessment of the Tabor Tower building. So it sounds to me like they've already done that. Is that correct?
Having answered Councillor Firth earlier, he just has walked through it with the owner and an architect, but no studies have done on what the building is like, any inspections, anything further than that has not been done.
Yeah, I just read it the way it was presented to me. It just says that it sounded like you guys had already done that over at that other building. Okay.
And just to confirm, this basic is doing a comparison to both.
To both, yes.
Correct, yes.
Correct.
And Councillor Garner, are you able to add something related to the funding source Mr. Arford was
We
referring
add
to?
it to our 2021 budget.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
I'd just like to, we haven't really looked at the Tower Theatre. We haven't assessed it. And by doing this, we're kind of throwing that out. I know the building's old, but that would be a beautiful thing to have downtown. So I know by making this motion, if we throw that out, so I'm a little hesitant about this, just until we look at the other building. By it's going to be expensive, so to look. And so I think a little more discussion between council should be warranted on that.
All right, thank you, Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, again, through to our delegation, does the group have a preference as to which location they would prefer?
Yes. We would prefer the old theater. Personally, I have looked at both, and I've performed in the Civic Center, and I have attended performances in the Civic Center. Currently, it is not performance worthy. Having done investigations, I have a background in theater. Would take a lot to fix it up to make it performance acceptable. And the theater, I have gone down, went through it, and looked at it, and basic renovations would make it fabulous. With more invested in it, it would be an awesome addition to our community. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right, with that, there is a motion on the table with the said amendments. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated? Thank you. Just for clarification, Mr. Armfield, unless something else comes up, that's where we leave it as such for now?
Yeah, certainly. It's within your procedural bylaw that a defeated item is to stay in abatement for 6 months, but that is obviously up to the whim of council. That is the direction, the procedural bylaw, though, but it's up to council. Or you could have further discussion at this point before you move on the agenda. But certainly within your court, but the procedural bylaw states 6 months.
Thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, if I may direct this question to Mr. Arnfeld, can we go forward with the motion to investigate the old Tower Theatre to see if it may be suitable with fire codes and whatnot to make it into a theatre? And I guess if so, there's a monetary value attached to that, but I'd sure not like to see this not fall through with.
Yeah, absolutely. If council if you wish to make another motion and the chairperson accepts that motion and you guys vote on it, then it's direction to administration.
Chair's perspective, the topic is still on the table, so if somebody wishes to do so, we will certainly accept that. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In that case, I would like to make a motion that Council directs administration to pay for a basic assessment of the Tower Theatre building to provide a very basic design and high-level probable cost to convert the Tower Theatre building to a performance theatre.
All right.
With funding to come from the 2021 capital budget.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravis.
Yes, your worship, as much as I'm in favor of a theater and have been pushing it for several years from way back when we looked at building a building in front of the auditorium, I have reservations about the location downtown, and I know the committee thinks it's a viable location. It's a downtown location. You could certainly never have anything there during the daytime because of the parking situation. It's an older building that you're going to have an engineer look at the structure on it. I don't think you can do it, with the costs outlined there. It's been around for a number of years, and you're going to have to do an assessment with an engineer on the structure. And I just don't think that $13,000 is going to be well spent in assessing that building.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councilor Firth's motion did not address the cost included in the motion. So if I can make a friendly amendment, please, if you would accept that for the basic assessment of $7,000.
I would accept that friendly amendment,
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
All right, on to item 5, bylaws. There are no bylaws. Item 6, action item 6.1, organizational review. Mr. Arnfeld.
Yes, this is an item that council has been working on for a number of months now. And today was an interesting day news-wise. Minister Shandro came and announced today that 11,000 Alberta Health Services jobs were looking at being cut for consideration to go private. And the basis of those 11,000 jobs that he's proposing was a study by Ernst & Young, an Ernst & Young report, which was done earlier this year, that they've based those cuts on and that proposal on. And I look at this organizational review in a very similar way as that Ernst & Young report, that this gives the municipality some place to bounce back to. I am not convinced that we have hit rock bottom with what we're looking at with 2021. I think at the end of 2021, we are going to be in a very similar position as we are now, with having to find revenue and cut expenses. And this organizational review gives your administration a very good hand up and a very good bit of direction in order to seek where we're going to find that revenue in 2021, if indeed we still see a decline in the economy. So I'd like to thank council for the vision and the participation in putting this thing together, because if anything, it gives administration some hope and something to think about, rather than dwelling on just cutting and having to make those cuts. You see my discussion that I provided council, which I won't really dwell on unless council has some questions. Other than the financial implication, it was just under $40,000. And I look at this document as really a policy document of council, and taking a page out of that and taking that as direction. We've already saved for 2021 about $100,000 with contracting out our health and safety position, as well as our human resources position. So moving those two positions into a situation where they're on contract and maybe the level of service isn't as high, but those are the days of where we are right now. I can very comfortably say that's about $100,000 savings there operationally. And from a capital perspective, some of the suggestions that are made to allow staff to spend a couple of days at home per week out of the office definitely saves on space here. So a high-tech approach to employee engagement and operations rather than building more brick and mortar, as well as the proposal for the maintenance, the mowing. Those lawnmowers are about $40,000 to $50,000 a lawnmower, and so we have to address those expenses every year. So from an operating and capital expenses, certainly gives administration some great direction to start to seek how we can rationalize going forward and be a bit more efficient, and ultimately save the taxpayers of the town of Taber some tax dollars.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion right now that council adopts the organizational review document as presented.
Right, thank you. Motion on the table. Councillor Stravis.
Your Worship, there's some good recommendations in here, and there's some that I'm not in favor of. I don't think we've had enough discussion on this here. I think we need to review this here, sit down and as a committee and go through and weigh out all these factors, because that's not something that we've done as a council. And I believe before we proceed and approve this here, I think we as council need to sit down and review all this here. At a work table and just see how it's going to be affected and who's going to affect. And I'm sorry, but there's lots of things here that I'm in favor of, but there's some that I don't. And grouping them all in together is not the right way for me to go. So I won't vote in favor of this at this time.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I cannot support this motion based on the correspondence that I've received today. I am not prepared to pass this review. I believe that, as Councillor Stravis mentioned, that we have a little bit more considering to do. Again, there are some good recommendations, but I am not prepared to support that motion today.
All right, thank you. Councillor Towns.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I also would like to echo what Councillor Stravis said. There is some very good recommendations in this report, some that I can truly really get behind and support, but there's a few that I can't. And I think that Councillor Stravis' suggestion that we as council need to sit down as council and have a good, basically roundtable discussion about this document is totally warranted. And I think I cannot support the motion to pass it just like that. I would rather delay this till our next council meeting, but I can't support the motion on the table.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I believe we have discussed this at least twice or three times, and we're all aware of what the circumstances are with today's economy, and we can delay this, but I stand with my motion.
All right, thank you. And I'd have to echo also what Councillor Firth has to say about some of the recent information we've received is important and needs to be considered. So I would also be not supporting the motion. So once again, there is a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Thank you. Councillor Thames.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we delay this till our next meeting, and prior to that meeting, that council has a meeting at council so we can have a discussion about this option and proposal. I think it's high time that we as council had that meeting alone, and that we delay this till our next council meeting.
All right, just for clarification, you're looking for a special meeting related to this?
Yes, just to this topic. Yes,
Topic.
please.
That would be your motion?
Yes, please.
Special meeting. All right. All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, on to item 6.2, 2021 operating budget. Mr. Arnfield.
I'll ask Mr. Orwa to come and begin the presentation of 2021 budget. Ultimately, council is aware through our conversations where we have been with this 2021 budget. We've gathered the feedback from council. Mr. Orwa, would you like to come up and make a presentation here? This is
Mr. Orwa.
The mayor and members of council, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Extraordinary times calls for extraordinary measures. Because times are hard, we have to look at different areas. Now, from what you see, we're going to present today is 2021 capital budget, and some of the information that is on the RFD, I think some of them had already been, you've already seen some of the areas. But there are some particular areas that I would like to explain as we move forward, because it's going to touch, especially when we come to the next few months with the mill rates. So if I will refer you to the background information there on number 5. So number 5, you do part of those assumptions, there's that 2% increase in net tax revenue. I think the 2021 budget, we've provided about 2% increase in tax revenue. But I really wanted to emphasize that this will not automatically translate into 2% mill rates. So that when we come to the mill rate times, we'll see depending on which direction we go. Because there is that, as you're aware, there is that inverse relationship between mill rates and the assessment. So that is one area that I wanted to point out early so that it will develop into the next discussion as we move along. Because the mill rates are dependent on our actual assessed values. So if the assessed values decrease, the mill rates will need to increase to break even and vice versa. So we do not know those facts. But what we do know at this point in time is the preliminary numbers we are getting out of the equalized assessment. As you all know, that equalized assessment is what the province uses for the school requisitions and the senior requisitions. So they have already given us some projections there. These are preliminary numbers. They are preliminary because they are based on 2019 assessment, which drives the 2020 tax year values. So I think around November, you'll see the assessors going out there and revising those numbers. So we don't know what they look like. But what we do know today is that their projection indicates that we'll be having 5.66% increase in the residential and farmland and a 2.2% on non-residential. So I wanted to have that discussion early enough as we develop into the new year when it comes to mill rates. So what you see there is just net tax revenue being increased from 2020, and that's nothing to do with the mill rates at this point. Then the second part that I would also like to explain from this budget is number 8. Now, if you do recall, we were giving the library about 229,463. That number is still very fresh and vivid in my memory because it's the same number that has been there for a very long time. But around 2020, council decided to give the library additional 50,000. So in this particular budget, I've also maintained that 50,000 until maybe council advises otherwise. So that 50,000 is also in the 2021 budget. That's why you see that 279,463. The other thing that I would also like to explain here is outside, you remember all the community-related organizations, we gave them that 3-year rolling budget. So they came and presented to you what they thought they would need for the next 3 years. And we've gotten 2 additional requests. And one of them is coming from the Tabor Public Library. And I think this is for their this is a one-time request. So they're requesting council to give them 10,000 in 2021 for their one-time 75th anniversary. So I think they're celebrating 75th anniversary being a public library. So they're requesting 10,000 from council. So that is something new from what council has seen before. The next item that I would also like to explain, which is not factored in this budget but is coming through as a request, is from the Tabor this handybus. Now, if you recall, they came and presented last time here, and what they requested was 98,605, which of course I factored that one in the 2021 budget, and they also requested about 102,000. But they came back with additional requests, although they could not present last time. But their request is, in 2021, they're requesting additional 40,883. And in 2022, they're requesting additional 28,000. And the reason given for the 2021 request, they're saying the increase in budget reflects an increase in the expense for the procurement of COVID-19 related PPEs. So those are the items that I wanted to put before council, the additional requests that are coming out, which has not been factored into this particular budget. Now, based on that, probably I would just open the floor for discussion for 2021 budget.
Great, thank you. Councillor Stravis.
Yes, Your Worship, some time ago, 6-7 months ago, when we were looking at the budget and we knew we were going to be coming forward to these, that there was going to be an increase, I floated the idea to council and never got much response from it that perhaps, all things considered, rather than maintaining a 2% tax increase, that we look at a hard 3%. We have maintained our taxes for the 7 years I've been on council at 2% or less, and I think these are circumstances, trying times now, that we should be looking at a 1% increase over that. We should be taking that up to 3%. I'd like to hear some comments from council on that, whether they would support that or not.
Great, thank you. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Stravis, are you talking about a 3% increase in revenue or a 3% increase in mill rate?
I'm talking about a 3% increase in revenue based to taxes, not the mill rate.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I am concerned about item number 8, where we're increasing that to a total of, not increasing, sorry, but it's going to cost us 300,000. I'd like a little more discussion about that, and why are we doing this, really? The handy bus service to me is much more important than the library, and we keep throwing more money at the library. I'd like to see some reasoning why we're doing this, and to throw $10,000 to a 75-year anniversary to me makes no sense. And further discussion maybe.
Thank you. Councillor Town.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and in regards to Councillor Stravis and a 3% increase in revenue, I'm not necessarily going to disagree with you, but sad reality is if we're not going to pass the organizational review this evening, to pass this operational budget is also going to be ill-advised because the budget takes into account a certain portion of that organizational review in order to make it work. And I'm wondering if we're biting ourselves in the foot by not doing. If we didn't do one, I think we can't do the other. That's my own personal opinion, and I might be wrong that the budget also reflects that the organizational review. But I would like to know if that organizational review is reflected in this budget first. And it might have to be a question for Mr. Armfeld, I think.
All right, Mr. Armfeld, is that a fair question?
No, as I had talked about in the introduction to the organizational review, that is for the end of 2021. So this budget for 2021 that we're proposing now is a business as usual budget for this municipality. Okay. So the two things are completely separate. The organizational review is a document that looks at potential savings for how the municipality works to be implemented at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. This budget is independent of the organizational review. This budget is simply cutting how we currently do things right now, standing alone from the organizational review.
You, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to Councillor Bruin and with a question to Mr. Orwa, I believe that as regarding item 8 is we are not increasing the funding to the library. We're maintaining the same amount that we funded last year. Is that correct?
That's correct. So in 2020, we gave them 279. That was the top up with the 50,000. But I just wanted to let council know that I've maintained it again. So in 2021, I've maintained that 50,000. So 2020, 2021, it's flat at 279 for 63. This was just to draw your attention that I've maintained the 50,000 that you gave them in 2020. So I did not add anything else apart from the 50,000 that council recommended in 2020.
All right, thank you, Mr. Armfeld. Some other comments there?
No, I
That covered.
nothing to add.
Okay, all right. Just to clarify, Mr. Orwa, the 40,000 update, I understood that's what they were asking for an additional because of the COVID situation, basically. The handy bus, anyway.
That is correct. So the reason that they gave to me when they requested this additional funding, they indicated that it reflects the expense of the procurement of COVID-19 related PPEs.
So that is clarified. They're looking for that 40 for that purpose. Okay, thank you. Councillor Stravis.
Yes, Your Worship. Commenting on the Tabor Handy Bus, of course, they've been shut down for a number of months. They're back in operation, and of course, they have a whole new procedure in putting people on their bus, temperature checks and masks, all different type of things, and it's slowing the whole process. Of course, the revenue expectations are going to be down for the current year. It's a heavily relied upon service in this community for those that can't get around, that are mobility and not enhanced, I guess, dehanced. And I really think that we need to support the Tabor Handy Bus, for the people that they service.
Sir Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding Councillor Cham's comment and further thinking about the response from Mr. Armfeld, I'm just wondering if it could be clarified that the organizational review, which we did not pass, was pushed until the end of 2021. I was under the assumption that the organizational review would, if passed, would be implemented immediately, like 2021. Not the end, but the beginning. I have a tendency to agree with Councillor Tams that the two are related in many ways. So my opinion is that we not pass this particular item either this evening, Mr. Mayor. But clarification required, please.
All right, thank you. Mr. Armfeld.
Yes, to Council. So the organizational review has a number of suggestions in it for reorganizing administration. That's probably the biggest cost savings in that organizational review, is the reorg of administration. So to do that takes a lot of work. That's not something that we can just flip a switch on. We have processes, we have job procedures, we have job descriptions that have to be rewritten to fit with the model of the organizational review. So the organizational review is a document that we will be working on for a year or two to get everything that we need to get ready on the administrative side to print a new business card. Printing a new business card for a new director is very easy to do. Realigning all of the processes that go behind the scenes in the municipality takes a bit more effort to do than printing a business card. So that some of the aspects of the organizational review that are much more operationally focused, I can bounce back to it, but the operational items, I can give you some for instances. That all departments create operational work plans, also known as tactical business plans, annually that tie back into the budgets under the strategic plan. So that particular item is being worked on right now. Those operational plans are being sent to me by directors as we speak. So that is something that is happening now. That town use irrigation water for landscaping needs where feasible and the installation cost is reasonable. That's a fair amount of work to figure that out, right? If we're going to go into the parks and we're going to adjust what parks are irrigated by domestic water versus what parks are irrigated by TID water, we have to do a cost balance analysis of that. 26, the grass cutting, tree pruning, weed control be consolidated under one department, probably recreation. That's fairly simple. But there's also the one where to consider contracting out grass cutting. To consider contracting out grass cutting, we actually have to issue a request for proposal and get some input back to determine whether it's in our interests or not to contract it out. So there's a number of things here that certainly aren't like flip the switch, it's going to happen immediately. Probably the ones that can happen immediately are like 20 that the administration of long services awards be the responsibility of human resources, that the responsibility of fleet management be assigned to corporate services, that the overall responsibility for leases be delegated to the corporate services department. So those are fairly easy internal changes to make. But then again, that is a discussion between Mr. Orwa and I to ensure that there's capacity in his department to accept this stuff if we send it his way. So that, I could continue if council wanted me to continue with some examples.
Mr. Beckering, does that suffice, or
But
would you like?
I was gonna continue, but Mr. Mayor, if I could just finish.
All right.
But that's why we have crafted the 2021 budget based off of how the systems are being done right now, because we had no assumption that council was going to pass the organizational review. Yet time keeps on ticking, and we are getting to the end of 2020, and we are getting to the need to establish a bar for our conversations with CUPE with regards to wages. So knowing that those two things are happening, that we're getting to the end of 2020 and that CUPE is going to have to be addressed with negotiations for 2021, we had to create a budget that worked without the assumption that you were going to pass the organizational review, because I have no assumption that you guys are, going to accept one thing one way or the other. It's certainly within your consideration to do anything. So we have prepared the 2021 budget to get us through 2021. The organizational review has been prepared to get us through 2022, 2023, 2024, and the next decade of this municipality for council's consideration.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? I guess just for myself, clarification, Councillor Stravis, the handy bus has been down for some time, correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So what happens with the budget monies they would be using? That's still basically banked?
Part of their budget, of course, is funds from ridership. the costs there, so they had no income for that. So, they're struggling to find a way. And of course, we're in the middle of a year, and there's still costs, different factors into this here. But we know that the procedures involved now in putting this type of individual in a bus are more intense. The drivers need more training. They're going to require more drivers because of the time and commitment on what needs to be done for all of this. So there's some costs that they've had to retrain their drivers to do all the testing, that some of their budget is eaten up in training costs and different things that they've had to purchase and come up with in order to get the bus back on the road. And they were quite adamant of not putting the bus on the road until they were 100% sure that their clients were going to be safe getting on and off that bus, and that the people that were bringing them to the bus were aware of what the clients had to go through in order to get on that bus. So there's a whole stack of issues there that they've had to deal with, and they've been dealing with them on that basis.
They've been incurring costs even though they're not operational right now?
Absolutely, they have been, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Garner.
This would be a question to Mr. Orwell. What is the deadline for us as council to be able to give back to you folks a balanced budget? What was the chronological deadline for that?
I think we don't have like a particular deadline, but we need to have 2021 budget passed in the current year for us to operate the following year. So we can't get into the following year without a budget recommended by council. But council could recommend a budget, but it can also again be revised at the time of mill rates again to be looked at one more time. But at least for 2021, you need to get a budget ready for operations. That's per the MGA.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravis.
Your Worship, I wondered if you could take a straw vote here. How many councillors would be in favor of increasing the taxes to 3% in the coming budget year as one of the alternatives of increasing funds, revenue? I didn't get much response when I floated that idea. Everybody kind of thought it was like taboo to touch that, but I think it's a factor that we need to consider. And I'd like the other councillors to, doesn't have to be a formal vote, just, if they would support something like that.
Does anybody want to start? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would not.
Thank you. Councillor Bruin.
I'm not here to be re-elected. I'm here to run a business, and I consider the town of Taber a business. Everyone's taking cutbacks. Everyone has to dally up to make things work, and we got to face reality. Town Taber is a business. It's not free for all. And I support Councillor Stravis. For the last 7 years, we've all said cut taxes. We're not going to increase taxes. We want to get re-elected. We want to run this town. But realistically, the town costs money to run, and we're not stepping up to the plate with that. And really, if you look down, we've kept taxes as low as we possibly could, and we're paying for it now. So I'd support Councillor Stravis on increasing the taxes. And if we want to keep this town successful, we got to face reality. So that's my 2 cents on that.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I would also support Councillor Stravis's recommendation to increase tax revenue to 3%, for many of the reasons that Councillor Bruin just mentioned. Nobody likes paying more taxes, myself included, but extraordinary times. We didn't know what 2020 would look like coming into it, and we don't know how it's going to end, but sometimes these things need to be done, so I would support it.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Thames.
I am of the opinion that I can't support 3%. Already included in this operational budget is 2%, and I can work with 2%, but I would not support 3% increase. And and yet I'm still torn because I do see the merit in it. But at the present moment, I'm going to have to stay. I can't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Garner.
I'm not in favor of going to 3%. I think that we are going to have a meeting to review the organizational review. At that time, I think we should look at this budget line upon line and find some more efficiencies and try to keep it as feasible. You have to look at the tax base that we're asking that 1%, or did they get a 1% increase? How are they going to do that? How are they going to manage that? I mean, it's pretty easy to just say, yeah, let's raise taxes. But, the reality is everybody out there is hurting. And I think that our job is we need to meet and take a few hours as a council and come up with some efficiencies. Because I think they're there.
All right, thank you. And for myself, I would be a little reluctant to support the 3% solely, unless there's some other angles we can look at as well. Mainly because we've maintained the 2% average for the most part for the last 7 years, as I said, Councillor Stravis, and or a difficult year that we're having. It's probably the worst time to be considering that kind of an add-on. We've talked 2% this whole year, and that's what's figured in this budget currently. And that makes it really difficult, I think, going forward, particularly the kind of year we've had thus far. Councillor Stravis.
Just in summation, then you realize then when we go into that meeting behind closed doors, we're going to have to look at service cutbacks and layoffs and whatnot in order to balance this budget, because it's pretty, our administration has over the years has worked with a pretty fine budget. And, if we're going to look at it, it's going to be some hard decisions made. And when we come out of that closed session meeting, we better have some good solid proposals for administration to go forward, because we need to give them some back up.
All right, thank you. Just a question for Mr. Orwell, just to clarify, if we did go another 1%, what does 1% get us from the tax increase, roughly?
That's the message I've just sent, so that's the calculation is going on right now. Because I don't have the 20 numbers here with me. But I just want to emphasize that it is 3% increase in tax revenue. We do not know exactly how that would translate into mill rates until we see the assessed values. That is the only thing that I would like to emphasize there. So we're just going to calculate the 3% increase in tax revenue so that we see exactly what that's going to be. Because right now, I think the 2% was giving us about 190. So definitely it will be over 200,000 for sure on tax revenue. Then we'll wait to see how the assessment looks like.
So 1% is roughly 95,000 according to that, basically.
For mill rates, 1% increase in mill rates from the calculation the basis have worked in the past gives us about 80,000 in revenue. That is if you increase 1% increase in mill rate. But this one here, we're just across the board just taking, if we had less than 9.4 million in 2020, you increase it by 3% to see what it is today.
All right, thank you. Mr. Arfeld.
Yeah, the effort that we have done previously, Mr. Orwell, is captured under number 5 there. A 2% increase in net tax revenue from 2020 is 190,000. Divide it in half and add the half. There's 3%. So we're talking $85,000-ish is the figure that we're talking.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, any other questions arising? Someone prepared to make a motion? Or not make a motion?
Your Worship, I think
Stravis.
probably, oh, sorry. Your Worship, I think probably we should delay the motion on this until we have that meeting as well. I would concur with other councillors that think that this is tied in a little bit about where we're going to go in the future.
All right, thank you. We're all on board with that. All right, thank you. Moving along, item 6.3, municipal election 2021. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, Ms. Van Ham's getting ready for the municipal election in 2021. Ms. Van Ham, are you on the phone?
Good afternoon, Mr. Armfield. Yes, can you hear me fine?
Yes, I think probably if you stay in one spot and speak directly into the microphone, you'll come through all right.
Sure, thank you. So in preparation for the 2021 election, before December 31st, there are considerations that council is, we're requesting council to make before that time frame. It relates to the Local Authority Election Act as well as things that are specified in the MTA. So these are fairly standard items that council has in the past considered, and so we're just asking for that motion for council to consider them again. And I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Ms. Van Ham, would you like these all as separate motions, or can they all be one?
If I could have one, each one is separate motions would be great.
Sure.
1 through 4.
Thank you. So I move that council agrees that no changes are requested to be made by bylaw for changing the number of councillors in the municipality pursuant to section 143 and 144 of the Municipal Government Act.
All right, Councillor Garner.
That's fine.
All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Second required motion, Councillor Thames.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council agrees that no changes are requested to be made by bylaw and that the election of councillors be by vote of electors in the whole municipality as been done in the past and not by wards pursuant to section 148 and 149 of the Municipal Government Act.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Garner.
Make that third motion. The council agrees that no changes are requested to be made by bylaw in that the chief elected official, mayor, shall be selected by vote of the electors as has been done in the past, rather than by an appointment from among the elected councillors pursuant to section 150 and 151 of the Municipal Government Act.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the fourth required motion, Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council, pursuant to section 73 of the Local Authorities Election Act, directs that an advanced vote be held in 2021 with the returning officer to determine the days and hours when the advance vote is to be held.
All right, thank you. Now, is this, sorry, does those have to be separate, Mr. Armfield, or can all that be?
I believe, Ms. Van Ham, that all of number 4 can be read as one motion, correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay, so you don't want to read all that, do you, necessarily?
Very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll continue.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to Section 79 of the Local Authority Elections Act, direct the returning officer to arrange for voting in 2021 by elector assistance at home through the attendance of 2 deputies at the residence of an elector during the hours an advance voting station is open, in order to make the votes of an elector who, because of physical disability, is unable to attend a voting station or an advance voting station to vote. Number 3, pursuant to Section 80 of the Local Authorities Election Act, designates the following institutional voting stations for the town of Tabor for the 2021 municipal election. Number 1, Tabor and District Healthcare Complex located at 4326 50th Avenue, Tabor, Alberta. Number 2, Clearview Lodge located at 4730 50th Avenue, Tabor, Alberta. And number 3, the Good Samaritan Society, commonly known as Lindenview, located at 4700 64th Avenue, Tabor, Alberta.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Good, thank you. On to item 6.4, information for council. Mr. Armfield.
Yes, council may be interested to know and participate in, and may have further direction for administration, that the municipal district of Tabor is looking at how their recreation grant funding policies are carried out. So that was a letter sent to me, but I thought I would pass it on to council in the event that you had some feedback for us there.
All right, thank you. Councillor Becker. Is it, oh, that's still on, sorry. All right, was there any questions arising? All right, someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Firth.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council accepts the material received in this agenda item as information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And item 6.5, standing item for council. Council requests. Mr. Armfield.
This is the opportunity that council has to ask administration any question or give us any direction through the form of a motion.
Great, thank you. Any items? Councillor Garner.
I have something that I'd like to bring up, and then I'm going to form a motion on it. So I've talked to several people recently that have a concern about on the walking path around the golf course, how dark it is, especially with diminished sunlight, of course, in the winter. But they're concerned about the west side of it and also the east side of it. And I've kind of driven down there, walked it a little the past week, and it is pitch black. And so the motion I have crafted says the following, and so I make this motion that that we ask administration to look into the feasibility and the possibility of attaching some adequate lighting on those existing power poles along those sides, the west side and the south side, and get back to us at the next meeting as to how feasible that is and what would the cost be, and then we can make a decision at that point in time.
All right, I guess just for clarification, I thought you said west side and east side originally.
Sorry, I'm talking about the west side and the south side. I'm sorry, west side and the south side. There are existing poles along both of those sides.
South side opposite Highway 3, west side
Correct.
Highway 64.
Correct.
All right. All right, thank you. Councillor Becker, do you have something to add or just another item?
May have another item, but in response to that particular motion, I wonder if Councillor Gardner would entertain the fact that not next council meeting, but the one after that.
Sure,
it's pretty short shrift here.
Absolutely. At council, at administration's convenience when they can bring that back to us.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravis.
Yes, just a footnote to your motion there. The Kiwanis Club has had a proposal to put some lighting along there, and because of COVID, that whole proposal has kind of got sidelined. So in that motion, if administration could also contact the Kiwanis Club to see just where their proposal is to be included in that discussion process.
Friendly amendment?
I guess that would be a friendly amendment to contact the Kiwanis Club for input.
Sure, it can't hurt. I mean, I've heard that rumor for about 3 years now that they're trying to do something, but it wouldn't hurt to touch base with them, for sure.
All right, thank you. Councillor Thames.
That motion also, it states that we put lights on these power poles, and we kind of tie their hands to now that they have to attach it to a power pole instead of looking at possibly some solar lighting along the pathway that might be also helpful or something different. But we're literally telling administration, check out what it's going to cost to put lights on a power pole. And I think we need to just forget the power pole, forget this, just that council directs administration to check out lighting along the walking path and leave it at that. Leaves them room to talk to Kiwanis, leaves them room to look at solar, leaves them room to look at a lot of things. Your motion pretty much tells them where we're going, and I can't support that. I think we are just directing administration to look at it. I think you got to just drop that whole motion, craft a new one. Just personally, that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm prepared to do that. I craft a motion that we ask administration to look into
So
lighting.
Garner, could you just withdraw that initial motion then, please?
Yeah, I'll
first?
withdraw it, and I'll make a new motion that we ask administration to look into lighting the west side of the walking path around the golf course and the south side, and come back with recommendations and costs.
Still adding something to the Kiwanis question?
Sure, and have the Kiwanis join in on it.
Pardon me?
Yeah, sure, and have that Kiwanis join in on it.
Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I think that motion's pretty hard to follow. I
didn't think it was going to be when I started.
Rescind that motion and start afresh. And I would suggest that you have administration look into feasibility of lighting the walkway paths instead of directing them to power poles or whatnot. Just, can we light the walkway paths?
You did that.
That friendly amendment.
We just did that. You just rescinded that motion and you just made one directing administration look at lighting. That's your motion.
Just to clarify, there's no rescinding of a motion unless the motion passes. It's simply a withdrawal of a motion. But are you still comfortable with your secondary motion, Councillor Garner?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table.
Your Worship, can we have it reread, please, so we clear of it?
Ms. Van Ham?
Sorry.
Councillor Garner motion that council asks administration to look into lighting on the west side of the walking path around the golf course and the south side, coming back with recommendations and costs, and have the Kiwanis join in on it.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin, do you have another question? Comment?
I have no questions, but I'm still a little confused about the motion.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And Councillor Becker, do you have a standing item option?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No motion, thank goodness.
All right.
I'm just wondering if council could be provided a really short update on the 56th Avenue extension regarding timeline and cost, please, if possible.
Yes, Council, I believe that is possible. Mr. Shearer, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Hello, are you there?
Yep, go ahead, please. There was a question with regards to the timing of 56th Avenue extension and where we're at with the cost.
So the timing is they're behind schedule. There's no doubt about that. We've received a few disruptions to the underground. There were a few unforeseen circumstances which delayed the project. We're still hoping to get it done, but it's weather dependent. I mean, if it turns 20 below, it's going to stop. There's no doubt about that. The underground can carry on. The budget we're fine with the budget. There's not an issue with it. We're right on there. It's the timeline we're worried about now. And it's all weather dependent.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shearer. Councillor Bruin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another first world problem, but actually a very good point a citizen brought forward to me is at our post office boxes on our streets where everyone gets their mail. She thought it'd be a great idea to add, I don't even know what you call it, doggy stations where you can drop the doggy poo off. If we could add those to our post office, and I would just like some council discussion on that, just so we can have a poop drop off at the post office boxes, because she finds that a lot of people are letting their dogs do their business around the post office boxes as they pick up their mail.
Mr. Downs.
And they did bring up a really good point, but I think the other point that we have to consider with that is that these post office mailboxes are not the town of Tabor's property, nor are they ours to look after or maintain. We have a corporation involved, Canada Post, and I think we're really going to have to guide ourselves carefully, because if we decide to do that, we're going to have to involve Canada Post, and that might not be the most friendly thing to do. But I totally agree with her suggestion, and yours too, Councillor Bruin, but it's going to be a tough one.
Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Tams. I appreciate that. We do own the land that the post office boxes have the agreement to put their services there, and it's just something for council to consider in the future, that maybe we might look at a doggy poo drop off at the site.
Mr. Garner.
My comment on that would be that I think dog poo is the owner's responsibility, and that I don't think the town needs to get into the collection of dog poo. I think it's an individual responsibility, and if you're a responsible owner of a pet, clean up after it, take it home, and do what you may with it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Stravis.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the Volunteer Golf Course Enhancement Committee would like to garner 2 rocks from the landfill Tabor site, one by the office and the second rock by the Trout Pond walking trail that crosses the entrance to the landfill. The reason for this motion is that there's a volunteer group that have been doing a lot of enhancing over there, taking out ties and building up pathways, and are doing a lot of work, and they like these rocks to do some more enhancing. They're not at liberty to say what they want, but they would like to gather these 2 rocks up. And they're on town property, so they just don't want to go and abscond with them.
I'm just not sure if I understand that myself, Councillor Stravis, as far as they're specifically looking for 2
Yes,
rocks?
they're looking for 2 specific rocks. They're flat-faced rocks so that they can put a sign on it. And one is up by the office. It's quite a large rock, and the other one is a flat-faced rock. It's where the Trout Pond crossway goes into the valley there. It comes across the landfill site. There's another flat-faced rock there, and they'll take and remove them and take them.
Rock is located, one's by the administrative
There's
officer?
2 rocks, one by the landfill office, the weigh scale office there, and the other one is where the Trout Pond walkway crosses the roadway to the landfill. There's 2 rocks. Quit laughing.
Does this create, like it's like a physically somebody can do it, or 2 people, or you're talking like a...
Oh no, they would get a picker truck and pick them up, because they're quite large rocks. They weigh probably 1,000 or 2 pounds.
Yeah, I guess just administratively, Mr. Arfeld, does you see that creating some difficulties there?
I would just want clarification if there's an expectation that on administration doing this, just to clarify, but they're council's rocks and you can do with them what you like.
Just for clarification, Your Worship, they have a picker truck and the bodies to pick them up and move them over, just like they've done all the other volunteer work there, and they will garner them and at an appropriate time that they're designated to get in there and pick them up.
It's not going to create a crater where we're going to lose somebody or something, or a vehicle, or...
Oh.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem with the rocks being gathered. Yes, I would question where are they going to put them and what are they going to put on them?
They're going to put them on golf course property, and I'm really not at liberty to say right now what they want them for, because they're going to have an unveiling and kind of, it's kind of one of those things that they need the flat-faced rocks for a specific purpose. Quit grilling me.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
I guess a long story short, they want 2 flat-faced rocks on town property to use to designate to someone.
Yes, they want to transfer them to the golf course property for signage.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering?
All done.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm all done.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Any other? Oh, Councillor Stravis, another standing item?
Yes. This is a question for administration. We're going into, Your Worship, we're going into census here, and apparently a community in BC hired TELUS to ping people's phones to find out. They did them for several months in a row to find out if they were actual residents of that community. I'm not sure if administration has heard of this technique or if that's something that could be repeated here in town.
Your Worship, administration has heard of this technique. It happened in the municipality of Revelstoke in British Columbia. We certainly could contact TELUS. Ms. Monks, are you on the phone? Have you reached out to Revelstoke? In any event, to Councillor.
Sorry.
Oh, hi,
Sorry,
Phyllis. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Through the mayor. Yeah, so I did reach out to Revelstoke. It is actually quite a large process, and it takes a tracking of over a year and a contract with them. It certainly would be an option for future census, but it is a rather large process and takes a lot of administrative work after the fact, as well as TELUS work after the fact, to validate the information that they've received and just confirm what's tourism related and what's not. And it's an interesting program for sure, and something we could investigate in more detail for a future census.
Councillor Stravis.
Yes, Your Worship, to administration, did they identify any costs that were associated with garnering this information? Because I understand it bolstered their numbers quite significantly.
It didn't identify any cost in the information that I looked up, but there definitely is a cost associated in a contract that's required to enter into with TELUS. Part of the reason that it potentially bolstered some of their numbers is because of that tourism aspect of it, but like they were able to determine at what points of the year they would have an increase in population, and whether or not that increased population was information that they could utilize for certain other aspects rather than just straight up grant applications, because this is your ongoing population. There was a lot of different aspects to it, but we could certainly put together some information and bring forward a presentation to council.
All right, thank you. Did you want to put together a motion in that regard, Councillor Stravis?
Councillor Bruin, did you have a comment first before we?
Just Councillor Stravis, I think it's a good time to stress how important it is for people to fill out our census, because it's important for the town and future planning for the town that people in the town fill out the census.
Thank you. In the meantime, I'll strike a motion here that administration contact TELUS to investigate the feasibility and costs associated with this census methodology. Does that cover it there?
Mr.
Mr. Chairperson.
I'm just, if you just want to read that back to us again, I'm not sure.
That administration contact TELUS to investigate the feasibility and cost association with the census methodology. Methodology.
Methodology. All right. Charles, I got it covered.
We're not sure what methodology, if it's not referenced in the motion. We need a methodology to actually investigate, if we're investigating a methodology.
I think you said something earlier. What did you call it
so
before?
That administering contact TELUS to investigate the feasibility and cost associated with the census methodology used in Revelstoke?
Yes, that would be fantastic.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Oh, you're sorry. You were
one opposed. You just didn't look this way.
Okay. All right. It's carried anyway. All right. Any other standing item? options. All right. With that, we'll move on to, there are no delegations, on to media inquiries. Tabor Times, Trevor.
Just a clarification. The resolution that Mr. Tams put forward regarding the special meeting, just is that to be in camera or in open session?
Closed session.
Okay. What FOIP exception would that be under?
Good question. I don't know.
If so, I believe that'd be section 24. Does that sound right, Mr. Arnfeld? If so.
Section 24 is disclosure of advice, proposals, recommendations, analysis, or policy options developed by or for a municipality in accordance with Section 24 of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act. And I believe, Ms. Van Ham, that has to do with administrative advice. Is that correct? Section 24?
Yes, Mr. Arnfeld, it does. Proposed plans.
Yeah, proposed plans, proposed budgets.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravis?
Oh,
Thank you, Trevor.
that's good.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. All right, with that, should we just take a short 10 minutes and move into closed session with the next motion there? Councillor Beckering.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we recess till 5 p.m. and go into closed session.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried now. Thank you.